Okay, so picture this. You've got a bat,
Right.
right? But it doesn't hunt the way you might normally expect. It listens. It actually eavesdrops on frog and toad love songs.
Yeah, the fringe-lipped bat. It's pretty amazing. They tune into these amphibian mating calls to find dinner.
But here's the twist, and it's a fascinating one. Not every frog or toad singing out there is a safe meal. Some are, well, toxic.
Exactly. So how do they learn that? How do they tell the difference between a safe song and a dangerous one?
That's what we're digging into today.
We're looking at some really cool research from scientists at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, STRI. It was published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society Bee, a pretty well-respected journal.
Okay.
And it gives us this first real look at how predators, specifically predators that eavesdrop like this, actually develop these hunting skills.
So our mission, basically, is to understand how experience, just being out there, shapes the way these bats learn to avoid a poisonous meal just by listening.
That's it. So let's break it down. These fringe-lipped bats, their main strategy is listening for these mating calls. They can apparently recognize calls from like over a dozen different species.
Wow, over a dozen. It's like they have their own internal amphibian radio dial.
Sort of, but like you said, there's a big hurdle. Not all those stations are playing good news for the bat. Some frogs are just too big to handle. Others pack toxins.
Right, so they can't just dive bomb every sound they hear. They need some way to filter, like a natural caller ID.
That's a great way to put it, a natural caller ID. And the big question the researchers had was, how does that develop?
Yeah, how do they get that caller ID? It's not like the calls come with little warning labels attached.
Right.
So the core of the research was trying to figure out, how do these bats learn to tell apart, say, a tasty tungara frog from a toxic toad, purely based on sound?
And what they found, especially looking at the young bats, the juveniles, is really telling. See, unlike the grown-up bats, these youngsters don't really seem to differentiate at first between the calls of tasty frogs and the not-so-tasty ones.
Okay, so the adults have figured it out.
Seems like it. Adults with more experience, they know which calls mean dinner and which mean danger, stay away. The juveniles just haven't learned that discrimination yet.
But here's something interesting. The young bats could still tell something from the calls, right?
Yes, that's key. They found that the juvenile bats, just like the adults, could identify the larger prey by their calls.
So size matters, even early on. They can hear big versus small.
Exactly. Acoustically, they seem to pick up on size cues. The crucial difference is that they can't yet identify the toxic species just by listening. That seems to be missing from their initial toolkit.
So it suggests they start maybe using size as a rough guide, like a bigger call might mean a bigger meal.
That seems likely, but recognizing toxicity purely from sound, that looks like something they have to learn. It's not innate.
Huh. It's sort of like, kids learning what's okay to eat and what's not. It takes a bit of figuring out.
Exactly. Some trial and error involved, probably.
Yeah, and Logan James, who led the study, really captures this. He said something like, "It's truly remarkable that these bats hunt using the calls of an entirely different group of animals. And we have wondered for a long time how these bats acquire this unusual skill." He points out that while we knew bats could learn in labs, this was about seeing it happen with real prey out in the wild.
Yeah, and Rachel Page, one of the senior authors, she made that comparison to human kids, too. She said it was so interesting to see that, like human children, young bats needed time and experience to hone their discrimination skills.
It really drives home that learning is part of development, even for what we might assume is just pure instinct.
Absolutely.
So, stepping back a bit, why is this study a big deal beyond just these specific bats? What's the wider significance?
Well, for one thing, it's really the first time researchers have directly compared how these eavesdropping responses, how predators react to prey sounds, develop across different ages in a generalist predator like this.
Okay, so first comparison of young versus old eavesdroppers in the wild.
Right. It provides solid evidence that this learning is happening out there in their natural setting. And the researchers think this strategy, learning to interpret sounds to judge safety, it's probably not just these bats.
You mean other animals might be doing similar things? Learning by listening?
Very likely. It could be a pretty widespread way animals learn about their environment and their food. This study suggests that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It makes you reconsider how many hunting skills we assume are just hardwired might actually involve a lot of learning early on.
Precisely. And Simina Bernal, another senior author, she highlighted that. She said, "This study highlights the power of development and learning to shape eavesdropping behavior. An insight that may extend far beyond bats to other predators also navigating complex sensory environments. She hopes it encourages more research into how early experiences shape food choices in lots of different animals.
It really paints a picture of a complex world for these bats. I mean, the source material even mentions the tungura frog. That's a favorite snack for them, apparently.
Right, the tungura.
And its call is complicated. It's got a whine part and then these chuck sounds sometimes.
Multiple chucks, yeah.
And the bats have to deal with hearing just one frog or maybe a whole chorus singing. And sometimes the frog even gets away after calling. It's not straightforward.
No, it's a dynamic hunt. That tungura call complexity itself is interesting. What makes that call attractive to an experienced bat? And how is it different from a toxic toad's call? That's likely part of what they're learning to distinguish.
It's good to remember this kind of work takes support.
Definitely. The study had funding from the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, the wider Smithsonian Institution, and also the U.S. National Science Foundation. It takes resources to uncover these things.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. The main takeaway seems to be these fringe-lipped bats, they aren't born expert listeners, at least not when it comes to danger.
That's the core finding. They have this incredible ability to hunt by sound, but that crucial piece, knowing which sounds signal a safe meal versus a toxic one that's learned.
That natural caller ID gets built over time. They instinctively get the size thing.
Yeah, size cues seem more basic.
But avoiding the poisonous ones based on sound, that's learned through experience.
Exactly. It highlights just how important experience is in shaping these really sophisticated hunting behaviors out in the wild.
It is pretty surprising, isn't it? You'd think such a specialized hunting technique would be entirely instinctual.
But realizing that a key part of their success, avoiding death by dinner, is actually learned. Yeah, it shows it's not all hardwired.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? About how other animals, maybe even us, develop skills. How much of what we perceive and react to is based on learning from our senses early on.
Right. What other abilities that seem totally innate might actually depend heavily on those first encounters, those early life lessons shaping how we understand the signals around us?
Definitely something to ponder.
Yeah.
How much of our instinct is actually learned experience? Fascinating stuff.